and that feeling like, I don't want to be tied down. Like, no. There's so much freedom in discipline. There's so much reward in going deeply into something rather than staying just on the surface of something. And if the question of what do I want feels overwhelming, and I know it does, for me it does sometimes, like, what do I want? I don't know. What do you want? What do you want me to want? What can I do for you? I don't know. It might be helpful to think of this sentence, how can I make this moment more me?
Namaste. You're listening to the Savannah Podcast. Join us on an exploration of Eastern spirituality, yoga philosophy, and conscious living for the new age. This podcast is a production of SavannahSpirit.com, where you can find a large selection of Om and yoga clothing, spiritual jewelry, and unique fair trade gifts from the Far East. Now here's your host, Ashton Sabo.
Greetings, everyone. Welcome to the Savannah Podcast. We've got a great show in store for today. Now, on this show, we spend a lot of time taking our lofty spiritual ideas and relating them to the everyday practical world of modern life. I bring up this idea that, no matter how enlightened you are, no matter how spiritual you are, you still have to take out the trash. You still got to do the everyday details if you're living in the world, if you're not a monk. And if you're listening to this podcast, chances are you're not a monk. You are living in the world. So one of the things that I see happening a lot in our communities is a problem or problems with procrastination, perfectionism, getting things done in the world. A lot of people struggle when they're doing all these spiritual practices. They can get a little airy, have a hard time grounding. And so we're going to talk about some of these in life practical things that you can do. We've got a great guest today. She's a writer, actor, teacher, and creativity and productivity specialist. And she's the author of Get It Done and the recently released Start Right Where You Are. Her name is Sam Bennett, and we're happy to have her on the show. Sam, welcome.
Thank you so much. Hi, everybody.
So if you could for a moment, I love the idea of a creativity and productivity specialist. So could you tell us a little bit about the work that you do and even how you got into your line of work?
Absolutely. Yeah. As you say, my background's in theater. I'm an actor, and I was one of those kids who put on shows, and I went to theater camp, and, I was an actor, and left college to get a job at the Second City, and I had one of those acting careers that always went well enough that you didn't quite want to give up on it, but not so well as to actually be able to support a person. And so I had a lot of different jobs and gigs and projects and shows. And along the way, one of the things I started doing was teaching this little workshop called Get It Done, because I noticed that I was pretty good at getting projects done. I was always, producing a show where I would decide like, hey, I want to do a voiceover demo. And I would get the money together, get the training, do the demo, get an agent, boom, and it was so satisfying. I'm like, yes, that happened. I love that. And I noticed that a lot of my creative friends were having trouble getting their stuff done because, let's face it, when there's no quarterly review on how your novel's going, it's really hard to make the time. We get everything done for everybody else all day, but we don't always move forward on the stuff that matters most to us. And I got really interested in this question of how do creative people decide? We could do anything to promote your work. What do you do? Do you have a podcast? Do you make videos? Do you do Facebook Live? Do you stand on the street corner with a sandwich board? That guy's doing that thing. That guy's doing that thing. Maybe I should do this thing. And when your work by nature is self-expression, there's no right way. There's no right way to be an artist. There's no right way to be a teacher. There's no right way to do yoga. There's no right way to be a parent. There's no right way to meditate. There's no right way to be a friend or a partner. There's just your way. There's just your way. So it's not like I've got some amazing system and everybody should do things my way. It's more like I've got some amazing systems to figure out so that you can figure out what your amazing system is.
Mm-hmm. Well, and your recent book, I haven't read the original book, Get It Done, but the recent book I read, and you've got a lot of really amazing practical things and little exercises to do, little meditations, things like that. Now, you talk about this problem sort of with creative people in particular, and I see this a lot where, especially in the modern world where we have so many options, we have so many different avenues, you're bombarded by media all the time, I don't even have TV, and I'm still getting bombarded by media all the time. There's social media, all this stuff going on all the time. How important is it to set personal goals in this work? Because I know, I have friends that are like, well, I could do this and I could do that, and they could do all these different things because they're talented and they're creative, but then their energy's so spread. How is it important to set achievable goals to actually get things done?
Yeah, Tony Hsieh wrote a book called Delivering Happiness, the Zappos guy, and he talks about some of the hallmarks of happiness. And one of them is progress or perceived progress. Like even in the lines at Disneyland, they have it tricked out so you sort of feel like you're getting closer even when you're not really. And I think that's so important to us as humans. We need to feel like we are moving forward, like we are getting better, like there is some discernible progress. And we're terrible at discerning our own progress, right? Because we're hunter-gatherers. We're not even done with breakfast when we're thinking about lunch, oh, that happened already. I don't care about that anymore. I forget about that. So anything you can do to mark the passage of your growth. It's one of the reasons why journaling can be so beneficial. I recommend setting just a minimum daily requirement for your goals. Like if you want to write a novel, like maybe you'll say, you know what, I got a full-time job and 2 little kids. I got no time, but I'm going to write 1 sentence on 1 index card every day.
And can we expand on this a little bit too? Because that was something I wanted to talk to you about. You call it the MDR, the minimum daily requirement. And this is something that I utilize as well in teaching, where getting people like, look, you don't need to do an hour yoga practice or meditation practice. Just do something that you can do every day. That's your minimum. Like, hey, I'm going to sit down for 5 minutes. And the vast majority of the time, it's never 5 minutes. You sit down, and once you've committed to doing it, you're like, oh, this feels so good, and I'm going to do it for a half hour or whatever. Sometimes it is only 5 minutes, but you have to set that minimum. Is that something that you encounter a lot in your work with people, where just having that daily, whether we call it a ritual or that the daily requirement of work towards something, how important is that?
I find it so incredibly valuable. And the other thing, in Get It Done, in the first book, I talk a lot about 15 minutes a day. Then 15 minutes a day, every day, before you check your email, before you check your email.
And you can say that a few more times, because I know you write in your book, and it's one that I'm like, oh my gosh, I totally need to do this. I wake up and I check my email first thing.
Oh my God, get the cell phone out of the bedroom.
That's a definite.
Yeah. Yes. So to claim that time for yourself. And as you say, sometimes, even if it is 5 minutes or 15 minutes, first of all, that's 5 minutes more than you spent yesterday. Like, yay, you. And there's something about spending that time on something that matters to you, and maybe even only to you, that really illuminates your whole day. And I know people have a voice in their head that says, like, I couldn't do that. That'd be selfish. I can't take that time for myself. My family needs me. My kids need me. My job needs me. And in all love, I have to say, they don't need you that bad. They don't. Not for that 5 minutes, not for that 15 minutes. And it's actually the opposite of selfish. Taking those times for the stuff that matters most to you is the opposite of selfish, and here's why. Because when you are walking around depleted, stressed out, exhausted, underfed, underslept, undermeditated, understretched, and with no sense of humor, the rest of us have to deal with you like that. And that is not your best self, and that is not fun for us.
Well, and you kind of flip the definition of self-centered around in your book, where normally the connotation is self-centered is a bad thing. But you've kind of reframed self-centered as a positive thing. Maybe you could talk to that a little bit for us.
To be centered in yourself, to have the center of you, that core, that heartwood, be bright and true and plugged in and lit up and energized. We know that feeling. I mean, your people are yoga students. You know that feeling when your core is engaged and connected, and it has very deep implications physiologically and spiritually, and any way you want to look at it, it's a great feeling. And so when you're walking around like that, centered in yourself, not being pulled off by every little incident and every little thing that's happening, but staying calm and rooted in the center of yourself, in the center of your life, then the rest of us get to deal with you like that, where you can actually listen when somebody else is talking, and you have a sense of humor, and you can have good ideas, and you can really be present with your children or your employees or your own practice. So taking that time to stay plugged into the center of you has so many valuable implications. And again, you can do it in just a couple of minutes a day.
Well, I know you're a big advocate of self-care, but one of the things that, and so am I, but one of the things that I encounter a lot with people is that they're like, okay, that all sounds great, but I don't have the time for that. So what do you suggest with people that you're working with or in your workshops for people that say like, hey, yeah, I get it, self-care is important, but who has time for self-care? I got to take my kid to the soccer game. I got this project. I got that. I got this. I don't have time for that. One, how do we shift the priority and necessity of it regardless? And then how do we actually, on the practical side, help people create that time?
Right. So I hear that too all the time. I don't have any time. And I kind of got to call BS. Like, first of all, how's that possible? We all get the same 24 hours. No, I don't get more time. You don't get more time. Everybody gets the same 24 hours. So it's not that you don't have enough time. It's that you are not allotting your time according to your values. Mm-hmm. You are letting yourself, again, be pulled off course with what you think other people want or what you think is, things that are of lesser priority.
I'm scrolling down Facebook.
Oh my gosh, right? So, and I'm a Facebook fan, don't get me wrong, but yeah, it's an incredible time suck. Mm-hmm. So, it's a little bit like writers, it's not that you're not writing, you're writing all the time, you're just not writing it down. It's not that you don't have the time, you're just spending it on other things. So to get very real with yourself about where your time is going, and it does take discipline. Like you have to be a really good parent to yourself. And sometimes that means just like negotiating with a smart 9-year-old, sometimes you have to promise a treat. Like, okay, honey, if you spend, half an hour doing the bookkeeping, then, we can go, call a friend or have a cup of tea or go for a walk or, I like to go back to bed and read. That's my, like if I bribe myself with reading, that usually works. And sometimes you need to, get out your strict voice and say, sweetheart, I love you. And you have to sit down and do this right now. And forgive yourself for not being so perfect all the time.
Well, you're kind of talking to this already, but it's something that I want to expand upon because it's something I encounter a lot too. And to say that, so in yoga, for example, now a lot of our listeners are yoga practitioners. In a posture, we literally limit ourselves. We close off certain possibilities so that we can move in the direction that we want. So we don't just dump into our joints, dump all over the body. You pull certain parts in. You close off certain potential and possibility to go forward. And I notice how difficult that is for people to do that in life, where it's like, well, but I don't want to shut off possibilities because then I'm not listening to the universe and all this sort of stuff, and then get caught up in this thing that I need to be open and receptive to all possibilities at all times. But what that creates is what you're talking about, of just getting pulled away at every little whim and every little gust of the wind. How important is it to create actual boundaries, to intentionally limit yourself in life so that you can achieve things that you want?
Yeah, and I get it, especially for creative people, and I think everybody's a creative genius. I mean, not everybody's artistic in the same way that not everybody is musical, but everybody's a creative genius. If you've ever solved a problem differently than anybody else has ever solved the problem, congratulations, you're a creative genius. But when you've got a lot of skills and talents and you're good at a lot of things, it can be really hard to decide. And I think we have a visceral reaction to the word decide too, because of course the root word of decide is side, which is to cut or to kill. And it's the same word as like homicide or suicide or pesticide, right? So we do have that feeling of like, oh, if I choose this, that means I don't get to have that. But there's a very beautiful thing that happens when you get into selective neglect. And I think especially for the entrepreneurs in the world, like just to be able to say like, all right, I see you over there, Snapchat. I get that you're out there and I'm going to ignore you for right now. because this is more important. You have to start prioritizing the things that you know are most important to you, because those are the things that are going to bring you the most reward. And so to lean into that which you want, like let your desire, your real desire, not your desire to be all things to all people or to do everything all at once, but you like get below. That's kind of an immature way of thinking, honestly, right? And that feeling like, I don't want to be tied down. Like, no. There's so much freedom in discipline. There's so much reward in going deeply into something rather than staying just on the surface of something. So to give yourself the gift of that, and to give yourself the gift of no, you're allowed to say no to things. And if the question, what do I want, feels overwhelming, and I know it does, for me it does sometimes, like, what do I want? I don't know. What do you want? What do you want me to want? What can I do for you? I don't know. It might be helpful to think of this sentence, how can I make this moment more me? How can I make this moment more me? How can I make this conversation more me? How can I make this outfit more me? How can I make this meal or this email or this talk or this meeting just more filled up with myself, with my own personality, with my own, and in this way we can engage more deeply in each moment. Even if you are being pulled in a million different directions, you're at least filling up each moment with some authenticity.
Well, and I love how discipline gives us freedom. My jiu-jitsu sensei used to always say, is like, look, people tend to think that discipline is rigidity and not freedom, and that just to be free means going with the flow all the time. But actually, the opposite is true, because if you're just going with the flow, going with your impulses, then you're actually a slave to those impulses. When you have discipline, you actually know, like, no, this is how I am going to respond to this. That is freedom, because I'm not going to be affected by my feelings of, well, I don't feel like doing that today and I'm a little tired. Or it's like, well, then you're a slave to that particular chemical makeup in your body, instead of saying, like, you know what, I've got the discipline that I'm going to charge through this no matter what happens, which again, I know is difficult for a lot of people in our community to cultivate that. How do you encourage people to start with that? Like, where do they, I know you're a big fan of like writing things down. Like, do they write their goals? I know you're into, in the book, you get into some prioritization of the goals. How do you encourage people to start? Like, if they don't know, like, wow, I don't know what I want, like, where do they begin to figure that stuff out a little bit more? You said, okay, make something more you. Again, how can they continue to build on something like that? Do they make lists? Can they, what do you suggest?
Yeah. So, I mean, I'm a big fan of allowing what we call the sparkly breadcrumb stage, right? Which is that feeling of like, well, I kind of think I might want to do something different, but I'm not really sure what it is. Or I might want to start dating again, or I might want to start this or that. And I think sometimes we stop ourselves before we even get started because we feel like it has to be perfect right away, or we have to know all the answers in advance. Which is what school does to us. School teaches us that we're supposed to know. That's how you succeed, right? You know the answers in advance. In fact, most of the time you know the questions and the answers in advance. Life's not like that. Life's not like that. Creativity is not like that. Meditation's not like that. Yoga practice isn't like that. Entrepreneurship isn't like that. Nothing is like that. So that willingness to just investigate and see what's sparkly, what's sticky, what zhuzhes you up a little bit, take a little step in this direction and see, and you know how that is. Sometimes you take a few tiny steps towards something you want and whoosh, it's like the universe just comes rushing at you and you're like, oh my gosh, I just started thinking that maybe I would go to Paris, and the next thing I know, I'm standing in line at the coffee shop next to this woman who's trying to sublet her apartment in Paris, and oh my God, that's when those amazing things happen, because you're focused, right? Because you're paying attention. It's not like some magical, I put a Post-it on my mirror and manifested an apartment in Paris. No, your brain is best at finding what it's looking for. So if you are looking for, Paris, Paris, your brain is going to go, oh, we're looking for Paris? Ding, 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 ding. Here's Paris, there's Paris, here's Paris. And you start to find what you're looking for. If what you're looking for is evidence that you are unloved, or evidence that you can't have what you want, or evidence that nobody, pays enough attention to you, your brain will keep finding that. Mm-hmm. Ding, ding, ding. And you'll keep reinforcing that story for yourself. So So I think the big thing is just make some decision somewhere about something, stick with it, and really start investigating, really start digging into what might be there for you, because everything is possible.
Well, and you mentioned something at the beginning of that answer that I want to develop a little bit more as well, because I'm raising my hand as a guilty party of the subtitle of your book, How Little Changes Can Make a Big Difference for Overwhelmed Procrastinators, Frustrated Overachievers, and Recovering Perfectionists. I probably could click off all of those a little bit at the end there, but in particular, you mentioned perfectionist, and this is something that, man, I mean, not only do I suffer from, but I know a lot of people that suffer from it. It's like, hey, I want everything to be perfect and great all the time, and if it's not, then it's shit, and I'll never use it, and I won't even offer it to the world. How do you help people that are suffering from this sometimes crippling need to feel perfect or to do things perfect? How do you encourage people to get past that?
Yeah, I have two things that come to mind. One is I just want to point out to you and to everyone, you are a terrible judge of your own work. You are a terrible judge of your own work. You're really, really bad at it. So you should stop doing that, right? Let other people be the judge of your work. It's not your job to judge your work. It's your job to get your work out, right? And that's part of our development as people. That's part of our ego development, right? That's part of our becoming more mature, evolved people, is to be able to say, this is my work, love it or don't. The other thing I would do, particularly if you're at the crippling stage, because I think that word is right on. It is crippling and paralyzing. And so what I suggest, whether it's perfectionism or something else that's keeping you stuck, some old story, some event, something that happened in your family, I don't know, make some 5-minute art about it. Make some 5-minute art about it. Draw that perfectionist person that's in your head. Write a little fairy tale about them. Write a little poem. Do a dance. Make up a song. Get out your Sculpey clay and make a little image of it. Like, get those feelings out. And a couple things happen when you do this. First of all, you're just breaking the pattern, because you may notice that those voices that say, oh, you're not good enough. Who do you think you are? This is shit. Nobody cares. Like, that's the same tape, right? So let's at least change the tape. You've been listening to that tape since you were 11. Like, let's swap that out, at least for something new. And when voices are inside your head, pardon me, they feel really real. Like, when things are inside your head, they feel really real. And some of that perfectionism takes on a very sort of logical tone. Like, well, nobody buys a first novel, well, there's, all the good ones are taken. Well, all this, you can't succeed as an artist. And that sounds really real. Like, that sounds totally logical, but it's not. So when you can get that feeling out of your head, you can start to interact with it in a new way. And you can remember that, first of all, feelings just want to be felt. Feelings just want to be felt. So your desire to be the best little boy in the world or the best little girl in the world and have daddy come and sweep you up in his arms and call you his little princess, or whatever it is that, that's the emotional need underneath the perfectionism, like, getting a chance to look at that, once that energy is released, it can transform and get promoted to a better job. The more energy you spend trying to keep that locked up, the stronger and more powerful it's going to get, and the more it's going to keep driving the car.
What I wanted to get a little further on, you actually, a lot of the things that you write about and you talk about are very similar to the things that we say in yoga and the things that we say in these sort of spiritual communities, which is why I love having guests that come on that they're not really necessarily in our field, but they sound like they're in our field. And that even goes to the point of, you teach pranayama, you teach a breathing exercise with the work that you do. I wanted to ask you a little bit about that, if that was coming from a particular place that you learned that, or is just something that you started working with? Because ratios, when you start getting into advanced pranayamas, I mean, it's all ratios. It's working with this ratio of breath and inhale and outhale and held inhale and held out exhale. Would you mind talking about the breath work that you do a little bit and sharing it and where it came from and that sort of stuff?
I'd be thrilled. Yeah. So the one I do it before every class I teach. I do it myself all the time, is 4-7-8. So inhale for 4, hold for 7, exhale for 8. And I have to tell you, I have no idea where I got it from. I mean, I've been doing it for probably almost 30 years. And I just don't remember where I picked it up. But I love it. I love it. I started doing it at a time in my life when my anxiety and depression was really kind of out of control. It was really sort of running me. And that particular breathing technique did a lot of good in terms of bringing me back to myself, bringing me back to my center when my mind was spinning and spinning and spinning. And I was having those racing thoughts, to come back just to the breath. Like, okay, just really, it was like talking to somebody on a ledge, like just breathe, just breathe. And there's something about 4-7-8 that it's like close enough to being almost like math that it sort of confuses me a little bit. Like I can't really think about other things while I'm counting 4-7-8. And I did a little research on it. People have told me in the intervening years, like, Dr. Andrew Weil talks about apparently a 4-7-8 pattern, but I've never actually read any of Dr. Weil's work, so I don't know. At least not that I remember. And I did a little research when I put it in the book because I thought, I should credit this properly. But it actually shows up in a lot of different disciplines. I couldn't find it rooted in a particular history. Mm-hmm. But I love it. Doing it just once has a lovely effect. Doing it 3 times is delightful. Spending an hour or 2 doing it will change your entire chemical makeup.
Well, and you kind of touch on it too. A lot of the different ratios, while there are some that, through people practicing these things for thousands of years, they notice different effects on the body. And so the ratios can play into that. There is the simple fact of like, hey, I'm also just paying attention to something other than the normal stream of my endless thinking. So it's like, okay, now I'm focusing just on the breath and just on the actual ratio. So as you said, because there's numbers involved, you can't start to wander off and start thinking about puppy dogs and clouds and cotton candy. You're like, no, wait, I'm on my 3rd breath. Okay, and this is the 2nd count. And like you have to pay attention to it, otherwise you lose it. So it necessitates getting out of your head and really getting into the present moment, which is something that I think a lot of people struggle with, and it's really important to do.
Well, and that's what Start Right Where You Are is all about, right? So have a beginning where you are right now. And one of the things you are doing right now is breathing. So get into that moment, fill up this particular moment, because this is where the power is. The only change you can make is right now. The only thing you can do is what is in front of your hands right now. You can't control the whole rest of the world. You can't fix the past. You certainly can't do anything about the future, but you can do something right now. So that's why I say, like, what's your breathing doing right now? How can you make this moment more you right now? How can you focus your attention on the things that you want right now? No, you can't have written a novel right now, but you can write a sentence. You can't have lost 30 pounds right now, but you can behave in this moment like a person who's 30 pounds thinner, and make those choices and exert control over the things over which you actually have control. And the things you don't have control, the proper response to the inevitable is relaxation. Get over it.
We say I use the term swaha all the time in Indian fire rituals. Before they throw something in the fire, they say swaha, like they're giving it up to the universe. Like there's nothing more I can be done about it. All I can do is just say like, hey, hope this works out, what to do. And I think that's an important thing. It's kind of like saying screw it in a way of just like, you know what, nothing I can do about it. So I'm just going to do my work, do what I can that's directly in front of me. And then the rest of it, that's up to something that's larger than me anyways.
Absolutely. Getting upset about things over which you have no control is another definition of insanity. I mean, it's crazy. Why would you do that?
And it's a total waste of our time, which, I'll say this from the, given the political climate of our country right now, and I'm guilty of it. A lot of people I know were very impassioned about the feelings behind things, but it leads to this like all-consuming, life-consuming, getting stuck in the politics of it. It's like, but some of that, there's nothing we could do about it. So why are you investing half of your day getting upset about it when it's like, okay, you can go out and vote and you could encourage other people to vote or something like that. But like getting furious with like conversations on social media and things like that. It's like, what value, what purpose is that serving in any way?
Well, and how close are you hewing to your own values? then some of the work we do in the Start Right Where You Are book is getting clear on really what are your values and which is like what's important to you, what drives you. And oftentimes when you ask people, they'll say like, oh, my health, my family, blah, blah, blah. And those things are valuable and certainly values, but they're not always what get you out of bed in the morning. And so to focus on like, what's really important to me is authenticity and transparency. What's really important to me is kindness. What's really important to me is good humor and fun. So how am I engaging in those? How am I making the world a better place? Through my own day-to-day actions. And one of the things I say all the time is nothing bad is happening. Nothing bad is happening. And this little mantra, like not only does it talk me off the ledge when it feels like something bad is happening, it forces me into another perspective to find the ways in which whatever is happening is actually good or beneficial.
So not so much a denial of what is happening, but rather, as you mentioned earlier, shifting the focus to the positive, because they both exist at the same time. They're both there. It's just a matter of shifting the perspective to, hey, nothing bad is happening. I'm learning something here, or whatever it may be.
Right. And just because something is uncomfortable or not what I had planned or, not my preference doesn't make it bad. I was one time I was trapped in one of those traveling nightmares, like planes, cancellations, lost luggage. Like it was a very long day of travel. But right at the beginning of what this incredibly long, horrible day of travel, the thing had gotten canceled. We were all in line at the airplane counter trying to get rebooked on whatever. And this woman walks past me on the cell phone and she's like, I'm stuck at the airport. It's a nightmare. And I was like, and I was so glad that happened because I was feeling kind of disgruntled too, but I was like, wait a minute. It's not a nightmare.
And it's so nice to have that reflection of like, oh, wait a second. There's that one extreme. It's not that bad. And it lets us be a little
We're
calmer.
here. We're warm. We're fed. We're trying to get to New York. We'll get there. There's jet travel exists. Like, it's fine. And having that perspective all day of like, nothing bad is happening. Sure, I have to stand in this line. Sure, and now, again, I can be present. I can connect with the person behind the desk, not from the perspective of this is a nightmare, but from the perspective of, okay, we're doing the best we can. Nothing bad is happening. Let's move forward from here. And, what am I being asked to learn? What am I getting the opportunity to observe? What muscles am I getting the chance to build? Like, oh, tolerance of boredom. Oh, tolerance of, bureaucratic ineptitude. Right on. It's not me being mad about it isn't going to make it not happen. So.
Right. So in general, I mean, what I'm kind of getting and what I'm taking away from your book and the things that you're saying is that, I mean, literally establishing where you are to start where you are. Like, okay, I need to know where I'm coming from, what my values are, what my goals are, what it is that I want. And then just chipping away at it, not needing to have it all done in a day. I mean, we come from this instant gratification society of like, I want it done now. So it's like recognizing that things have a process. I know that's something that a lot of people struggle with as well, is expectations on when things are supposed to be finished or not. It's like everything kind of has their own time.
Oh, that's a killer, right? Yeah.
That's one I've personally been working very much with recently. I'm like, you know what? It's okay that it's not done tomorrow. It can take a little bit longer because it needs to get done the way it needs to get done. And that's, that's something that I definitely focus on quite a bit, or at least right now. But, right, so...
No, nothing bad is happening. Just because you thought it was going to be done by now doesn't mean that now is the time that it should be done by.
Absolutely. So just keeping the focus on the things that you can affect, the things that you can change and move forward. And I think this applies kind of in the very practical, down-to-earth sense. It applies in the spiritual sense of, these more larger spiritual goals, whether you're doing meditation because you want to connect to the divine, or it's still the same. You still have to sit down on the cushion. You still got to do your meditation, and it's still got to at least be right here, right now for a few minutes. Beyond that, who knows? See where that goes.
Right. And you can do it in line at the Trader Joe's. You can do it while you're picking your kids up from school. You can, you don't have to wait to have a happy life. You don't have to wait to find joy. Joy is not circumstantial. Right?
Absolutely. An inner state, if it's dependent on the external states, then you're in for a pretty rough ride through life, because you'll get spun around every single which way every single time something happens.
That's exactly.
Well,
the world needs you. The world needs you lit up and calm and listening and engaged. That's the you that we're craving, and so to give yourself the gift of that. And to give the rest of us the gift of that. We're not here forever, and we don't, it's a one-way street, and we don't know when it ends. So stop thinking that something is going to be different in the future, and start making your present the way you want it to be.
I love it. So this has been super fun, super enlightening as well. I appreciate your insights on all these little practical ideas of living in the world and getting stuff done. Where can we find out more about you, the work that you do? What's the best place to get your book? By the time this airs, your book will have released. So I believe it's on November 15th. So it should be out when they're airing. You'll have your other book as well, Get It Done, which has already been out. Where can we find out more about you?
Anywhere fine books are sold. You can get them online. You can get it at your local independent bookseller. We're always a big fan of supporting the local bookstore. So if you can order it from them, that's always that you get extra bonus gold stars for that. But
you're closer to enlightenment if you can buy it from a mom and pop store.
That's exactly right. But really from anywhere. You can get it from BarnesandNoble.com, from Amazon.com, from there's a Kindle version, there's an audio version, it's all out there. So and then you can find me at theorganizedartistcompany.com, which is all the way spelled out because I'm a spell it all out for you kind of a girl. So it's theorganizedartistcompany.com, or you can go to startrightwhereyouare.com, and that's got more information about the new book and some other fun bonuses and audios and little meditations and stuff.
Yes, and you've got some, I'm loving this new trend. I'm noticing a lot of books now have these sort of audio components with them as well, and that's super cool.
It's, it's an amazing time to be a writer and to be a creator of any kind. And I was just talking to a client yesterday. I'm like, a book doesn't have to be a book. It doesn't have to have pages and words. Like, it can be a multimedia experience. It can have links and hyperlinks and videos and audios and drawings and colors, and it can be whatever you want.
Awesome. Well, it's exciting times. To get any of that stuff done, though, you also have to just sit down and do the work. So I'm glad we're doing it. I hope our listeners get inspired to sit down and do some work. Maybe get done with the podcast and then just go get something done for yourself today. Again, Sam, thank you so much for being on the show. I really appreciate it. I'm sure our listeners have gained a lot. For everyone listening out there, thank you so much for being with us today. I hope you all have a wonderfully present and, in this case, productive and creative moment. Namaste. Hey everybody, if you have a spare minute, please go over to iTunes, leave us a rating and a review. We really appreciate it. And if you're on Facebook, check out our new Facebook group. It's the same name as our blog, Savannah East. Thank you so much for listening. Namaste.
You've been listening to the Savannah Podcast. To find out more about Savannah, go to savannahspirit.com or follow Savannah on Facebook at facebook.com/Savannah Spirit. For daily inspiration, check out our blog at savannaheast.com. Be sure to join us next week for a new episode, and thank you for listening to the Savannah Podcast.